What led me to be vegan? I think all of us are born with that compassion in our hearts, and if we were given that information and that education as children, I think we would all choose to be vegan and to have compassion for all beings and not hurt them. But we're indoctrinated now into a society that teaches us that this is normal, this is what you should do. But ever since I was a kid, like I've always like been helping animals on the streets in any way that I could, bringing food to the stray cats and stuff. And I remember, I don't know how old I was, maybe like 7 years old, like the first time that I recognized what speciesism was, when I was at school and the teacher was explaining what to do in case there was a fire. And she explained that we all have to evacuate and go to a certain area. And I remember asking, what about the fish? Because she had a fish tank. And she said that we were gonna leave them. And I remember being like so devastated. I was like, how could you leave them? How could you put them in there? They have no way to get out. They don't wanna be there. And I realized everything, I'm like, how come they don't matter to you? And I remember talking to the fish and I'm like, I'm gonna get you out. If there's a fire, I'm gonna get you out. And then another experience when I was like 12 years old, I think, I found a stray baby skunk and I took him in. I only had him for a day. I was gonna call a wildlife center, but I took care of him for one day. And I really felt a bond with him because he was just a baby. He was so innocent. He was just like a kitten. I don't know what happened to his family, but he was alone. He was on a construction site and he was way too young to be alone. The next day when I came home and I was gonna bring him to the wildlife place, I found out that someone had called wildlife control or animal control or something like that. And they accused him of having rabies for some reason. I don't know why, but they took him away in order to test him for rabies. They claimed this was the only way to test him, even though I know that's not true, is they killed him and they took his brain tissue and the results were negative. But I remember being so devastated, not necessarily like angry with the woman, but just so devastated that like, just because he was a skunk and considered a pest, they would kill him. And I know if that he was a human baby or a puppy, they would have never done that. And so that experience with the skunk also hit me really hard. I even have like his paw tattooed on my ankle. Like it just hurt me so bad to know that like he didn't even have a chance at life. He was just killed for no reason because we were concerned about rabies. Like who has rabies? Like you wouldn't just kill people on the street because you think they have like some kind of disease or something. Like that's absurd. You would help them. So those two experiences hit me really hard, and I think started to like wear away the speciesism that I had been taught. And it wasn't until I was 15 that I saw footage of a slaughterhouse, and that really shattered everything. Shattered all the notions I had been taught of like, oh, this is normal, this is what we should do. And I was like, no, like 100% unacceptable. This should not happen, and I can't believe no one told me about this. I can't believe that like you've been feeding this to me, because at that time I was eating McDonald's every day. We were pretty broke, so it was just McDonald's, and I was so upset. And I went vegan like immediately. I was never even vegetarian. I'd never even met a vegan. I just Googled like, what can I do for animals? And the first thing that popped up, luckily, was going vegan. And I somehow felt like an instinct too of like, that's not enough. So I really immediately got involved in activism. And I got involved in activism in Seattle at that time because that's where I was going to school. And I found the Northwest Animal Rights Network. I was involved in a lot of campaigns, like welfare campaigns, like abolitionist campaigns. Like I didn't make a distinction. I just did everything because I just wanted to help in every way possible. So I volunteered with a lot of groups that I didn't understand why they didn't like each other. And then when I moved here to go to UC Berkeley, I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anyone. But I met this girl who was vegan on the street, and she's like, oh, I have a friend named Wayne who's trying to start a vegan group and you should meet him. I think you guys would really get along. And so I met Wayne and Priya and everybody at their apartment in Oakland, and we all became really good friends. And at first I was like a little bit confused about their tactics and their ideas because I'd never heard of like taking veganism and animal liberation so seriously. Like I'd always been taught like, be a nice vegan, try to convince people like that's the way we should do it. And like, of course we should be nice, and it's always a good idea to like try to encourage people to be vegan. But I don't think that I took animal liberation as seriously as I should, or as I do now, because they told me like, we need to disrupt, we need to take direct action, we need to speak up for the animals and not speak up about like a diet, you know? And it took me a while to like really process that, but now I really understand, and I've been working them ever since. It's been like 5 or 6 years now. So yeah, it's completely changed my life. And in terms of how being vegan and activism has helped me, at the time that I went vegan, I was in middle school, and I never had like a stable family situation. Like we all had like struggles in our lives, but yeah, it was pretty rough for me. I was like homeless for a while, and like my parents didn't, like I love them, but like they weren't exactly there, and they did the best they could, but like they weren't together, and they were just in different places. And so I ended up on my own a lot. And so I struggled really badly with anorexia and like bulimia and other disorders of, I guess, just trying to find some kind of vice or some kind of control in my life. But when I found activism, it really helped me channel that energy and that like whatever self-hatred I had, and like all the negative energy that I held inside of myself, I was like able to channel it and use it for something better, because I realized like, whoa, like life isn't about me at all. Like I'm not here for me, like I'm here for something that's greater than myself. And it's given me like a whole nother sense of purpose. And like I don't think I've ever felt so positive and so motivated in life. And it's completely like, I'm not trying to say like going vegan is gonna cure everything, but for me it really pulled me out of my depression. And like I haven't had issues with eating disorders or anything, because like I just completely refocused my life and my perspective on something that's greater than myself, you know, like the greater good. And I think that we need that in our heart, you know. We need a sense of purpose to know that like when I die or at the end of the day, like I did the right thing, you know. I think the most important thing for people who want to go vegan is to focus on the victims, because I personally feel that if people go vegan for their health, which is awesome, it's good for you, and people who do it for like personal or other reasons like that, I don't feel like it sticks as well as if you go vegan for the greater good or for individual animals. Because for me, I would never ever consider not being vegan, just because I know those animals, and I've been to the farms, and I think about them, and I think like this is justice, this is the right thing. Whereas I think if it was for my own health, if I wanted to be skinnier or like have better skin or whatever, like I don't think I could hold to it, because like I'm not as motivated by that, you know. So I think just keeping in mind like why you're doing it, the purpose, that it's for somebody else, that there are victims that you're trying to speak up for, and then also reminding yourself that like it's not normal to eat animals. I know that I felt really insecure about being vegan because I didn't know other vegans, and I was like asking myself a lot, I'm like, have I lost it? Like, am I supposed to eat animals? Am I going to die? Like, is this the right thing? Like, everybody's doing it, but I stuck to it, and I'm so glad now because I have a huge community, and I really realized like, no, 100%, like it's not normal, and like we don't have to do it. So like, don't let anyone convince you that like, oh, this is the normal thing, this is what people do, like that's a cute hobby you have, but like no, like this is 100% like the truth, that like we don't have to murder anyone. And it's a completely socially constructed idea that some species have to die for us, and that we have to drink milk and all these things. Like we don't need any of that. Like that's all based on nonsense and lies, and like we just had to keep reminding ourselves like, I'm breaking through a system that I've been taught, and I'm doing the right thing, and this is not normal. Because that's so discouraging when people tell you like, oh, like you're wrong, like this is normal, don't worry. And it can be so overwhelming if you don't have a vegan community. And also you should look for a vegan community, because there are vegans everywhere. Like everywhere I've ever traveled, like I've found vegans. And if there isn't already an established group, I would look online, like meetup.com or Facebook, or try to see if you can find a group in your area. But if not, you can just post like having a vegan potluck. Like a lot of communities have started from potlucks just because like they're simple, and everybody wants to eat. So if you want to try to find vegans, I would put a potluck out there. That's how I found a lot of friends in Seattle at least. Yeah, like meet other vegans, because you're not alone. Yeah, for me, I'm really passionate about immigrant rights too. I'm passionate about all social justice issues, because all oppression is connected. Any ideology that's based on certain beings being lesser because they speak a different language, because they're born into a different body, like because they have a different skin color, all of that is wrong. So like speciesism and like racism and like all of these things, like they're pretty connected in so many ways. So like I feel like if people are vegan and support that, they should support other social justice causes. For me, immigrant rights is pretty important, just because I have so many friends that are affected by that, and so many friends, like my closest friends, my partner, who are immigrants from Latin America, and just seeing like the racism that they experience and the fear that they live with, of like the fear of deportation, the fear of being arrested, the fear of going back to their countries and dying. All of those things is like so real to me, because I see it every day and I live with those people, and I'm just like, this is so wrong. And so there's also so many parallels specifically with animal rights and immigrant rights, because one, it's based in the idea that like someone is different in some way, so they're allowed to be oppressed. Also, that almost all of the workers in slaughterhouses and in like these farms where animals are tortured, if we can even say farm, these places where animals are tortured, almost all of them are immigrants. A lot of them are Latin American immigrants, but there's immigrants from all around the world as well. And they're exploited in so many ways that are just as heinous as the exploitation of animals too. Like a lot of them aren't paid. There's a lot of wage theft that happens. I've heard a lot of stories of people demanding to be paid, but instead of being paid, the company will call immigration and everyone will get deported rather than ever getting the money that they worked for. Or people get diseases, because if you're dealing with those chemicals and dealing with animals like that, a lot of people get sick themselves. So there's been a lot of stories of people becoming sterile or getting lung infections and things like that and never getting the medical help they need. Recently, there was a vigil here in California and one of the workers came out, and she was an immigrant too, explaining that she'd been reporting like workers' rights abuses to OSHA and OSHA didn't care at all. So she was thanking us for being there because she's like, someone's speaking up because what's happening here is not okay. But she works there too, so like the people that work there understand. There's also, I did a paper in college about the connection between slaughterhouses and immigrant rights abuses, and they found that a lot of slaughterhouses are moving south because they want to be closer to the border to be able to exploit people, because no one wants to work there. Like none of those people that work there want to be there, which is part of the reason that we should never have campaigns targeting individuals, because it's a systemic thing, you know, like the people that work there don't want to be, so it's not their fault and we shouldn't attack them. It's more of a systemic problem. Yeah, so the violence that the workers have to inflict on animals translates into their normal lives as well. So it's awful what happens to animals, and it's also awful what happens to people that have to do it, because they develop an insensitivity and like apathy towards other beings, because their job, which they're forced to do, is to take life all day. So there's been a lot of studies that show that like those people who are marginalized in so many ways, who are forced to work there, end up going home and have elevated risks of suicide, alcoholism, and domestic abuse, which like feeds into like sexual violence and like sexism too, and all these other issues, you know, like it's all connected. Like violence creates more violence, you know. So I definitely think it's really important for us to be in solidarity with a lot of causes, because it's all connected. Like I don't want a world where there's no slaughterhouses, but we still have detention centers and prisons and borders and all these other things that cause so much harm to other people. I definitely think that if we're going to achieve animal liberation, it's going to encompass all marginalized groups.